hello, very beautiful community. Mr. Putin has just finished a 3-day working visit in Kyrgyzstan. He's given a 1-hour-long speech, which I watched and translated a part of it for you in a very pedantic way to illustrate an important point. But apart from that important point, which we'll get to in a second, what we're going to judge is whether the headlines about this speech are right, because some of them imply that Putin is saying no to negotiations because he again called Zelensky illegitimate. He did call Zelensky illegitimate. He thinks Zelensky is illegitimate. By the way, psychologically, Putin categorizes Zelensky not as an enemy but as a traitor. That's a very important distinction for him. But the observation that the Ukrainian regime is illegitimate in his view actually did not come with the idea that he doesn't want to engage in a peace process and he doesn't want the Ukrainian regime to engage in a peace process. He didn't say either of these two things. So let's get clear about that and then say a little at the end about where exactly Putin stands toward making possible concessions. Question, and these questions are planted. Mr. Putin, who do you talk to on the other side? Who do you negotiate with? Who would sign the final documents on the Ukrainian side? Is it the political leadership? Is it the military leadership? Who can you deal with? Putin's answer. Signing documents with the Ukrainian leadership is meaningless. I've spoken on this topic many times. I believe the Ukrainian leadership made a fundamental strategic mistake when it hesitated to proceed with presidential elections, at which point the president exhausted his status of legitimacy. Notice how legalistic this language is. That's the first point we're going to be making, because there is something very important to understand about Putin's political character that often isn't conveyed unless you speak the language. He went on, Russia is also in a state of armed conflict with Ukraine, interestingly enough. But we did hold elections, presidential elections, and recently elections to regional and municipal bodies. After all, we do all that, and they, for some reason, do not. As soon as peace agreements are concluded, of whatever character they might be, hostilities cease, you'd need to immediately, and listen to this language, terminate the operation of the enacted martial law. Think of how cumbersomely legalistic that language is. Why is he saying this? What is he hiding? Why is this so suspiciously and defensively formulaic? You might say, well, perhaps it sounds a little bit more fluent in Russian. Well, it doesn't. I mean, here is the Russian from his speech earlier today. Прекращать действие введенного военного положения. Terminate the operation or the operative effect of the enacted martial law. Just terminate the martial law. If there's martial law, it's obviously enacted. And if it's enacted, it's obviously in operation. Why do you need to terminate the operation of the enacted martial law? You can just use 3 words about it in English. Just cancel or lift the martial law. You can use 3 words about it in Russian too. What's his deal? His deal is that he is a convolutedly and pathologically legalistic figure. You might say, well, no, he's a gangster. How is that possible? Well, it's a kind of gangsterish instrumental legalism. So, legal formula is invoked when it serves the monarch. It's invoked selectively. And the objective quality of this is you get a kind of a legalistic grammar, but no legalistic substance. But it's important to understand that this is more than just veneer for Putin. So if you're a political opponent of Putin's and he's choosing between drowning you in the river and drowning you in the lake, he's not just going to do whatever he prefers and then attach legalistic speak to it. He'll allow the decision about whether to get rid of you in the lake or in the river to be informed by the question of how much legalistic porridge he can attach to the justification of the decision. Likewise, he might alter the method or the timing of taking out a political opponent if there is more legalistic porridge to attach to it one way rather than the other. And so it's very important that this is not just discourse, right? This is not just the political technology of speech. It actually affects how he makes decisions. So his gangsterishness is inflected by kind of legalistic pathology. So it's very important that we grasp that about Putin, and it's hard to understand that. Just listen to translations of him. Thank you for tolerating this point. Let's go on. Putin went on, and I won't give this to you, to rave on and on about corruption in Ukraine and about the Constitutional Court. Roughly, he accurately described some scandals, but he used them to paint an exaggerated picture of institutional collapse in Ukraine. Now, does him saying signing documents with the Ukrainian leadership is meaningless mean that he is rejecting peace talks? No. He might be rejecting peace talks, but he's certainly not saying that he's rejecting peace talks. So some of the headlines which implied he was refusing to negotiate don't represent what he said. And even headlines which say he's refusing to negotiate with Ukraine are borderline. Here is what he actually conveyed in the rest of the speech. He said that we do want an agreement with Ukraine in the end, quote unquote, even though it might not be, for now, possible practically or legally. But, he said, whoever from their side can and wants to may conduct negotiations. The implication being that later a renewed Ukrainian leadership might just take them over, or finalize them, or sign up to them and so on. So, he is not saying no to international recognition of some kind of peace. He's not saying no to the current Ukrainian government engaging in peace talks and perhaps signing something. So all that's actually happened is that he, in a very intransigent way, repeated the thing he's always said, and that's that Zelensky is illegitimate. Now, the intransigence with which he repeated it, because he's aware of the headlines it's going to generate, are partly about his assertiveness and his confidence about where he currently stands. He's confident about what's happening on the front line. He did a 2 or 3 minute rant about the possible collapse of the front on the Ukrainian side. And he's also confident that if he doesn't make concessions, it'll force the Trump administration to put more pressure on Ukraine. So he's a little bit excited about that prospect. I think if you look at Putin's current position, there are two important things to say. Number one, he is currently not open to making any significant concessions relative to where he was a few months ago. He doesn't see a reason for that. So the talk that, there's some talk out there that Putin is desperate for some kind of a deal, it's just not true. It's just not true. Moreover, he even finds the initial 28-point plan that was very unfavorable to Ukraine unacceptable. Elements of that 28-point plan are already unacceptable to Putin, including the 600,000 strong Ukrainian military. That's the first thing to understand. He is not budging yet. And you might say, well, what the hell is going on? Why isn't he budging? Well, the truthful answer is that the West just hasn't supported Ukraine in a way that's commensurate with putting Putin in a position where he will budge. The second point is that there's a kind of a perception of a crisis of agency in Trump's administration, a perception of that in the Kremlin. So funnily enough, what's happening is that the Trump administration is Kremlinizing. There are different factions in it, different clans doing different things. Vance and Witkoff and Kushner want to put Ukraine in a very difficult position. Rubio is trying to sabotage that. Trump roughly sides with Vance, but isn't interested in the details and would take any kind of deal so that he could say he ended the war. But this kind of Kremlinization of White House power is leaving the Kremlin confused about who they're dealing with and what it all means. There's a nice line today I've just jotted down from the Russian analyst Tatiana Stanovaya, which is good. And she said, Steve Witkoff is convenient and receptive to Russian ideas, but is bureaucratically isolated and politically fragile. He takes well-known Russian positions, repackages them, and watches them die almost immediately. So the Kremlin are discombobulated. They don't know who to talk to. And when they do know who to talk to, they don't know what the implication is of having talked to the people they have talked to, because there are other people who seem to be in the Trump administration pushing in a different direction. So what does all of this mean? And which peace proposal are we even talking about? Because there now seem to be 77 floating around. So there's a kind of a problem of agency the Kremlin have. They don't really know who they're dealing with because they're finding the Trump administration so discordant and so incompetent that they aren't confident about how to handle it and how to push their own agenda with it. Thank you for being with me. Lots of love.